Welcome back to The Common Historian, where history meets the supernatural. I'm Jeremy, Common Historian, and each week we explore the haunting intersections between our past and the paranormal. Tonight, I'm joined by Jeff Folb, owner and general manager of Vermont Gatherings, and the organizer behind one of the Northeast's most unique events, the Vermont Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Expo. Now in its seventh year, this event brings together cosplayers, paranormal investigators, authors, horror icons, and genre fans from across the region. And this year, it's April 25th and 26th at the Champlain Valley Expo in Essex Junction, Vermont. I'll be there in person hosting the paranormal panel. So grab your favorite beverage, dim the lights, and let's talk to the man who built this community from the ground up. Welcome, Jeff.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Well, I'm very excited about the event. This will actually be my first conference that I'll be attending. I'm kind of new to the whole community of, the paranormal and history, the fantasy and sci-fi. So, but I'm very excited to be going. For anyone who's never been, and how would you describe the Vermont Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Expo in your own words?
So, I guess a little quick background. About 10 years ago, my wife and I moved back to Vermont and realized that a lot of the things that we enjoyed, the Renaissance fairs and the Vermont Comic, the Comic Cons and the cons and expos really didn't exist here. And so we decided to give it a try. And here we are 10 years later with almost 50 shows under our belt. And about 7 years ago, there had been a small Comic Con locally. And we said, well, we won't do that kind of show until they're gone. We didn't want to step on toes or whatever. They went out of business, and so we said, okay, here's something to fill. Here's a hole to fill in the local shows. But we want to do a little bit more. We had a lot of different interests between my wife and myself and some friends. So we kind of wanted a Comic Con, but we also were really into. She's a real big fan of paranormal and the fantasy side of things, and so we decided to open it up to a lot of genres and almost any medium. So whether it was sci-fi, fantasy, horror really got added just a few years ago along with paranormal, pop culture, and really focusing on, it didn't matter what the medium was. So authors, artists, comic creators, podcasters, prop makers, fan organizations. Vermont's a unique environment. A lot of people here don't want to travel necessarily to, 3 hours somewhere else to go to a show. So it was what can we bring to Vermont for our local community that kind of touched on all these different genres. And we started adding guests a couple of years ago. Like I said, we've grown our paranormal side immensely, and the show's done very well. We get thousands of people over the weekend. We've got different tracks going with panels and workshops. We'll have about 150 different participants this year, authors, artists, all kinds of vendors, fan organizations, displays. It's just a really fun show. And it's, what else can we add every year? Who else can we add? What else can we add? This year we've got Bruce Boxleiter and Claudia Christensen from Babylon 5. We've got Adam Berry from Ghost Hunters and Kindred Spirits. I've got Bill Diamond, the Puppeteer, coming. The Vermont Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cosplay group. I mean,
Oh,
it's
I
just,
saw them.
yeah,
I was excited about those.
anything that we can find that, people want to meet and see and talk to is welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very excited that there was kind of what I consider local. I'm in Chattagat, New York, which is, it's a little bit away, but it's closer than going to Massachusetts or Maine or, you know, or
Well,
even the other side of New York.
it's tough, especially with Vermont, whether it's the highway system, whether it's just the environment we have, the community we have, you have to drive somewhere to go do something. And particularly if you're taking a family or kids or whatever, driving 3 or 4 hours to southern New York or Boston and then having to stay over, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of cost.
Yeah.
And, if we can keep people close, make it economical. And a big thing for us is supporting our local artisans and crafters and the creative people, whether they're designing and writing a comic book or building a prop or, paranormal things. It doesn't matter. If we can support them and give them a home, the better they do, the better we do.
Yeah. 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 I'm really excited. When I came across the event, I was like, oh, I got to go to that. And I think I reached straight out to you right after.
I usually feel that way too. I usually have to go.
So, if this is the seventh annual event, what would you say has changed the most since the first event?
I mean, obviously we can say, size and participation and all that, but I would say it would be adding the additional genres. To begin with, it was really sci-fi fantasy. So it was comic books, superheroes, Star Wars, that kind of thing. And over time, it was adding, a lot of people come to me and go, well, can you do a horror show? Can you do a paranormal show? Can you do a pop culture show? Well, we have more cows than people around here. So it really, we don't have the population to do each of those events on its own. But
Yeah.
it was real easy to kind of meld them all together into one big show. We've got, if people have never been to the Champlain Valley Exposition, it's really our one big venue. We've got 80,000 square feet, three big connected buildings, so space isn't a problem. So as we years went on, we added more and more buildings. Now we're in all three, and we can have, and there's some intermixing, but we can have a horror section. We can have, guests over here. We can have our cosplayers, gaming, and we've got 4 or 5 different breakout rooms to do panels and workshops. I think we've got 12 or 13 panels and workshops each day this year over
That's
all
great.
kinds of subjects. You're going to be participating in at least one of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And so I would say just growing the show, not just in physical size, but in adding the different genres, adding the different mediums. One thing we didn't have in the first 4 or 5 years was guests. People don't know what's involved in getting even a B or C level Hollywood guest out to Vermont for a weekend. And we were slowly built up the size of the show and figured out how to kind of work with people so that we could get, guests like an Adam Berry from Ghost Hunters and Kindred Spirit, and have them come out and spend the weekend with us and do a panel and do a workshop and sign autographs and take pictures and all that. But have the ability for the local population, and then not just Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, part of Massachusetts, even Canada, to meet them and to meet all these different people and to meet each other. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. And with Adam Berry, how do guests like Adam Berry kind of change the energy on the expo floor? Does it?
it it changes. I think a lot more than people realize because they're a recognizable, more so than I am, I guess, a recognizable face, a recognizable person. People are coming not just for the show in general, but you'll see a lot online. I'm coming to meet this person. I'm coming to go to this panel. I'm coming to see, this demo or whatever it is. And so there's that draw. It's not just, well, I'm going to go to a show and have some fun. I have a goal in mind. I know that I'm going to go and sit at this panel and see what I get out of it. And so I think it's a little more focus for our patrons, maybe a little more drive to show. We're certainly expanding our physical target market in that maybe somebody like an Adam who doesn't do a lot of shows, a lot of cons and events, that we're having them here in Vermont, that maybe somebody in Massachusetts or New York will come now to the Vermont show because Adam's there,
Yeah.
and they weren't able to see him anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So, you mentioned a couple others beyond Adam Berry that are joining. I know that you mentioned a couple from, I think, from sci-fi. Is there other notables for the paranormal side? I only ask because it's, my audience is more the
Yep.
paranormal side.
So from the pure horror side, not the paranormal side, we've got Brett O. Wagner coming. He was Leatherface in the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Great guy. I can't wait to meet him. He's about 6'5", 300
Cool.
pounds. So I'm definitely going to be calling him sir. Uh, and we've got, like I said, a pretty big paranormal draw this year. We have, I want to say, 5 or 6 paranormal authors, for everyone from Leanna Renee Heber, Ronald Murphy, a lot of, I don't want to say necessarily local because some of them are traveling, but a lot of authors, panelists that are coming to, they'll have their table and their booth and selling their books, but then they're going to be interacting with you and others at some of the panels.
Yeah.
Um, we're not, at this point at least, we're not doing a a workshop, so to speak. So we're not going to do an investigation. There's
Yeah.
a little more logistically to that, but certainly at least the one, if not two panels, both to meet people like an Adam, but also for, I think, for all of you to kind of spend a little time talking about your personal experiences and, how you deal with and work in this genre, because I think you all have your own individual, you know, experiences with it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a podcast, an author, somebody who's been on TV, whether you've only stayed local and done investigations just in New York or Vermont, or whether you've traveled around the country or the world. And I was actually kind of surprised because I'll admit personally, a paranormal is not I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a fan of it, but
Yeah.
I don't follow it the way my wife does.
Yeah.
And so for her to have, this, she's always, for the last, not always, but for the last couple of years, been like, we need to get some investigators here. We need to get some authors here. And so she kind of was the one that reached out and talked to some of these investigation groups, talked to Adam, and got you all to come out. So we really have
Yeah.
almost a separate paranormal track now.
Yeah. Which is great. Yeah. The paranormal field, in this area is a little bit smaller, I think, than what we normally, but overall, the community is growing.
I don't know that it's small. I think it's unnoticed, or they haven't had a forum
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
venue, because in the searching and going around, there's a lot of paranormal groups. There's a lot of paranormal authors. I guess there's actually a lot of paranormal experiences. I mean, if you really look at the books and talk to people, and whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or hauntings or whatever, it's there. I just think that there's never been an event to bring
Yeah.
everyone together, to highlight it, to let the patrons who maybe are interested but not actively involved kind of become
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah. I think there's room to grow in
Yeah.
Vermont and this area of the, the
Yeah,
country
we have
really.
our weird and wonderful history around here.
I don't know if you knew, I grew up in Vermont. So I moved over to New York when I was in high school. So well, that's kind of how I ended up in New York, but I grew up in Montgomery. So I know we've talked about the paranormal panel. What other panels and workshops programs do you have in some of the other genres?
So the big one, I think, for a lot of people, particularly to me, having been a big fan of the Babylon 5 TV series and movies, and having Captain Sheridan and Commander Ivanova joining us. So we're going to do a little mini Babylon 5 reunion. And so we're really excited about that. We've got a bunch of workshops and panels really focused on authors and artists. So, how to get published, how to create characters, how to design a comic book, almost hands on. Kind of my philosophy was, a lot of people are out there who may want to try something. Hey, I always wanted to write a book, but I don't know how to get started. Or
Yeah,
whether it's a book or maybe role playing, I want to create a character, I want to create a better character. So here are all these authors and artists and very creative people who can kind of take people along step by step and explain how they do it, maybe give them some new skills, whether it's cosplay, comic books, gaming, pretty much any of the genres or mediums that we're dealing with, and give them kind of a panel workshop on how to.
yeah. No, I know I'm excited, not just for the paranormal side. I'm the fantasy side, the sci-fi
Hmm.
side. I'm into that more. The horror too. I'm into all of it, but mostly the paranormal is my thing. But is there anything at this year's event that has never been there before or you've never done before?
Well, I would say the paranormal panels. Obviously, this year's guests. The only returning guest we have right now is Bill Diamond, the puppeteer, who
Okay.
created Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors and
Oh,
all kinds of other Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, whatever they are, puppets. But everyone else is new to the show. So obviously, our line of guests, probably 30 or 35% of our exhibitors and vendors are new. So a lot of new crafts and props and that type of thing. Some new cosplayers. We talked a little briefly before, the Vermont Turtles are showing up,
yeah,
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We're growing the sci-fi and particularly the Star Wars side of things, where not only do we have the 501st cosplayers, We've got the Mandalorians, we've got droid builders, a sabacc cantina if you're into playing Star Wars card games, and all the props and accessories that go with them. A lot of gaming, whether it's board games, tabletop, miniatures. We've got a miniature display that it's like 8 tables worth of little painted miniatures that somebody does. It's incredible.
Wow.
So just a real wide variety of stuff. I think it's the growth and then adding the this year's events. Again, mostly
Yeah.
focused around the guests.
Yeah. And I know that you said your goal is to support the local Vermont artists and creators. How do you balance that with bringing in kind of the national level celebrities?
It's not easy. It really isn't easy. Supporting someone local, whether it's a comic book artist or an author, it's giving them a space, it's giving them the venue. It's letting them promote and sell and offer their panels and workshops and things. When you start pulling the non-local celebrities, particularly people that really are a celebrity, so that have done movies and TV, that type of thing, it's working with agents, it's working with schedules, it's all the little nitpicky of transportation and flights and hotels and handlers. And then there's the cost involved.
Yeah.
They're obviously here to see their fans, but they're here to make money. Also, there's a lot of them involved. We've got a great professional photography studio that joins us, has for the last 3 or 4 years, and they'll set up right on the floor with some props and a little photo booth. Most, if not all, of our guests will actually spend about an hour a day there, so people can not only get a quick snapshot and autograph, but a professional photograph with the guests. And
Oh.
I'm not necessarily an autograph hound. I can be a little bit of a fanboy sometimes, but a lot of people really enjoy meeting, whether they're actors, TV, movie, paranormal, whatever. They want to meet somebody who they've, seen on TV, seen in the movie theater, read in a book. They want to meet them.
Yeah. I'm excited to meet some of the people that you guys have coming, and also some of my friends that I chat with all the time, or I've talked on Zoom through,
Mhm.
but never met. So it's gonna be a great weekend, I think.
Yeah, it's neat for us. I mean, definitely, we spend a year planning. We've got 8 shows this year. And,
Wow.
each of the 8 shows takes a year of planning to do from the year before. So, yeah, we're spending hours upon hours on the phone, on Zoom, on, emails, going back and forth with people. Some who are friends and, returning participants. Some are people where we've just met and
Yeah.
never met them in person. So you've got that element too of that personal interaction, whether it's, a guest, somebody who you're probably never going to see again because they flew in from California for the show, or whether it's somebody who might be local who you've talked to online, but never got to
Yeah.
shake their hand or see their face.
So what does the typical weekend look like for a first time attendee?
Well, I think one thing they have to kind of think about either beforehand or as they get there is, kind of what are their goals? What are they there to do? Because you've got 100 and I don't know, 130, 120, 130 crafters and artisans and authors and vendors to talk to and shop and that type of thing. You've got all of the fan organizations and displays to interact with, whether it's talking to somebody in the 501st about how they built their armor or taking a picture with the Ghostbusters. You've got all the panels and workshops that obviously are scheduled that you may want to attend, and they all run about an hour each. We've
Yeah.
got the gaming going on, demos in some game designers' booths. We've got a whole small building that's almost half full of just tabletop games, board games, role-playing games, Magic the Gathering, whatever it is. Obviously, we've got, lunch and beverages and sweets and foods and snacks. So I think somebody like going to any type of full day event, whether they're going to spend 2 or 3 hours or be there all day, kind of needs to come up with a plan at some point of what's scheduled that they know they need to be available for. Maybe it's your panel. We know we're
Yeah.
going to go to that panel in such a time, so we need to be free for that. And the rest of the time, kind of wander around and see what attracts them. I doubt everyone knows everything that's going to be there before they get there,
Yeah.
or that even they would have interest in it if it's something new to them. Or maybe, like you said, maybe they meet somebody who they didn't know or somebody who they've only talked to on the phone, and you want them spending some time, getting to know them better.
Yeah.
And then, of
Oh
course,
yeah.
there's the cosplayers and the costumes and all that. We'll be giving away prizes and awards all day, both days. So, while it's not required, if you want to come in costume or in garb, as long as it's tasteful, be welcome. We probably get 30 to 35% of our patrons will show up in costume, whether it's, Star Wars, Harry Potter, horror film, anime. You'll see a little bit of everything.
It sounds it sounds like it's going to be a great time. I'm very excited for it, and I'm hoping that my audience will come out too. I do have a lot of local fans, as being growing up in Vermont, and just being over in northern New York.
But even for us, I mean, whether it's with us, especially with like the Renaissance Fair, the Vermont Renaissance Fair, or even with this expo, we've been involved, my wife and I, for upwards of 30 years. And so we have a lot of friends that now that we're running the events, there's an incentive for them to come up and come to the show. So it's a great chance also for us just to see, friends and family that we don't necessarily see otherwise.
Yeah. Now, you run multiple festivals throughout the year under Vermont Gatherings. How do you kind of keep the sci-fi, horror, and fantasy festival a little bit distinct from the other event?
Besides the multiple genres, I think it's somewhat of the how do I put it? The logistics of it. So unlike almost our any other shows, we'll let's compare, let's say, to the Renaissance Fair. So yes, we've got our crafters, we've got obviously a lot of food and beverage, and you've got performers. You're going to a show, you're being entertained. This is a little different because of the panels and workshops. So to me, it's a little more educational. You
Yeah,
tend to maybe be a little more entertained at, let's say, the Renaissance Fair, but you have a tendency to learn something, to be more involved, to even maybe take it home and follow up on it. I was talking about the panels and workshops on how to get published and how to write a novel and how to create a character. And one of my hopes is that people will come here, learn something, go home, try something, and maybe a year or two down the road, they're going to join us as a participant. So they're a
yeah,
patron now, but maybe they're going to be an author or a comic book creator or paranormalist, something down the road, and then join us as a participant.
yeah, yeah. Very true. Now, when you're putting together kind of the panel lineup, what do you looking for usually? When you're putting together that lineup?
I probably start with what I find interesting. And then it comes down to, what do the participants want to do? What
Yeah,
do they want to offer? Do we have, one person or 10 people? I can honestly say with the paranormal panel, we had to cut off. We had a lot of people interested, and we can only fit so many people, in the room and on the panel. So there was that involved. I think it's a combination of, what we, myself, and some of the staff, my wife, what we find interesting just in general, what we'd like to see, and then what the participants are. Sometimes it's a concept that I've thrown out there that we were able to get the participants into. Sometimes it's something that someone else completely came in and went, we really want to do XYZ, and we throw it out there, and a bunch of other participants are like, oh yeah, we're on board with that. So it depends. We've got some authors that are doing panels based on their work, and then we've got some generic, well, semi-generic, genre-based panels.
okay. Now, and we went into it a little bit, but we've kind of built that kind of Playertron culture for the
Mhm.
expo, with regulars coming in with costumes. How did that community did it develop? How did that develop? Did it kind of develop organically, or?
Somewhat. So I will say my wife and I were patrons for many years. Well, we'll say many decades at the fairs, at the cons. We went from going and enjoying it, just as ourselves with our street clothes, to becoming cosplayers and rennies and then vendors and stage combatants, and here we are now, management. And we're always looking to grow that level of involvement with our patrons. So I think some of it is our encouragement. You know, come in your costume, buy your costume while you're there. Come with your friends, meet new people. I think that's just the social aspect of a lot of these of genres. If you look at a good example would be the fan organizations, the cosplayers, whether it's the 501st, which if people don't know is the big Star Wars, cosplay group, whether it's the Ghostbusters, the 802 Ghostbusters, they've grown and probably have well over a dozen members now. So some of it's that social interaction. A lot of it is allowing people who may be a little introverted to kind of let themselves loose a little bit. I'll use my wife as
Yeah.
an example. She is not the most extroverted person in her day-to-day life, but when she cosplays and gets into costume, whether it's something Star Wars or something fantasy, she can be someone else. Maybe she can be herself, but
Yeah.
it's a chance for people to really be social and interact and not be judged. And we all do it in this day and age. I won't go into the specifics, but you know, whether it's the interest in anime or being a stormtrooper or whatever it is, you know that this is a fun, safe environment of like-minded people. You
Yeah.
show up in what's the big thing now? Mushroom hats. These gigantic mushroom hat cosplayers or anime, whatever it is. Anywhere else, you're probably going to get some strange looks and maybe some strange comments. But
You fit right in.
at the
Yeah, you
expo,
fit
you're going
right
to
in.
fit right in.
So, what does success look like for this year's expo specifically?
Probably depends on who you ask.
Oh,
Obviously, financially for us and for the participants, is having a good, successful show, particularly for us. If they do well, they'll come and do more shows. So there's that. For I think a lot of the participants, particularly the guests, beyond the financial aspect, is entertaining, is having a good time with their fans, letting their fans get an experience they wouldn't otherwise. For the patrons, it's the experience. Whether it's, like I said, coming in costume and being part of a group or joining a group, whether it's showing up and maybe picking up those pieces and that garb to start a costume, whether it's going to a panel and learning how to, write and draw and maybe going home and trying it. It's just coming and having a good time. It's getting that autograph, it's getting that prop piece. It's yeah, smiling for sometimes. And it's this particular one is the Renaissance Fair, not this expo, but it's the same.
that's fine.
One of the first years of the show, I happened to be out by the front gate, just kind of seeing what the flow of traffic looked like. And there was a family of four, mom, dad. The son was maybe 10, the daughter was probably 5 or 6. And the son was in his little out of the bag plastic night outfit, and he couldn't wait to get in and see the knights and everything else. And the daughter, who's 5 or 6 maybe, really had no idea what was going on and really wasn't into it. And you could tell she didn't want to be there. And for whatever reason, I kind of leaned down towards her and she was a little hesitant. I said, "You want to know a secret?" And she kind of looked at me. I said, "There's a unicorn inside." And we, in fact, had a unicorn inside. Well, her eyes got as big as saucers, and she's trying to drag her parents in before they even bought tickets. All she wanted to
Oh,
do was get in and see the unicorn. Being able to make a living and put a smile on people's faces, that's not easy to do, and it's fun.
yeah. Yeah, that's a great story. So, what is one thing people constantly get wrong about your events and what they actually are?
I think in general, it's some people who have not partaken in an event before believe that you have to be a diehard fan, whether that means having seen the movies or wearing the costume or knowing everything that's going on, and you don't. It's not about that. It's about coming out, having some level of interest or maybe just wanting to come and have a good time, see something different. Like I said, really being able to interact with like-minded people. I think that's one of the neatest things of you know, you bump into somebody and you've never met who may live right down the road from you, you don't even know, and you've got this shared interest. And so, being able to come and just realize that hours have gone by and that day's over. Maybe you're coming back for a second day, maybe you're not, but you've had an experience. You've had an experience, and it's not much different than maybe going to a ball game or, in our case, a hockey game, of having that experience in person, not in front of a computer, not in front of a TV, but being able to, to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye and, bring home a souvenir or a toy. It's the experience.
Yeah, yeah. Totally agree. So, kind of in general, where do you see Vermont gatherings going over the next few years as a whole?
At this point, with 8 shows, excuse me one sec, with 8 shows a year, I don't know that we could add many more shows. It's a 26 hour a day, 8 day a week gig. For the most part, it's a one person operation with lots of help, particularly when we get to the weekends of the shows and behind the scenes. But there's a lot of time and effort that goes into each one, and we're working on 7 right now at the same time. So I think our focus is going to be growing the existing shows. And whether that's, growing the size of the gate or the size of the show, or just growing, let's say with sci-fi fantasy horror, adding more genres, adding more elements, whether it's guests or displays or workshops or that type of thing. And then obviously drawing more patrons. Here we are 10 years in, at least with the Renaissance Fair, 7 years in with the Expo, and we've had tens of thousands of people come through the gate and the front doors. And I still run into people every single day who go, "Oh, I didn't know that show existed." We have ads on TV and radio and print and tens of thousands of followers and likes on Facebook. And every single day I run into somebody who has no idea we exist. So, we still have a ways to go to get, well, let's say the entire population of the state into some of our shows.
I just realized you guys had this year. So,
Yeah.
and I just live just over the pond.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the beat. We all live in our own little kind of communities and world out there, and sometimes if you don't go looking for something, you don't find it until it drops in your lap.
So I had just one more question for you before we wrapped up tonight. Where can people buy tickets, follow the event, or find you on April 25th?
I'm going to be hiding. So our website is www.vtgatherings.com. All of our shows are on the one website. Most of our shows have their own Facebook page. So if you look up the Vermont Sci-Fi Fantasy and Horror Expo, you'll find our Facebook page. And there's updates. There'll be schedules and maps before the show in both places. Tickets are available online now. They're also available at the door both days. Tickets to the professional photo sessions will be available shortly online. There's a list of guests. Like I said, there'll be a schedule of the panels and workshops. It is at the Champlain Valley Exposition in Essex Junction. Parking is free. Kids under 6 are free. There will be food available both days. It's a big venue, but certain things like panels and workshops are somewhat limited. So if you're interested in doing it, get there early, look at the schedule, get into the shows. Come in costume. You don't have to, but you're more than welcome. There's ATMs on site. Most people there take credit cards. And as far as finding me, look for the beard, I guess. I'll be everywhere and nowhere, or as a lot of my friends and family like to say, the man behind the curtain.
And I think it's, what is it? For one day, it's $20, $30 for both. Is that
Correct.
correct?
And
Yeah.
kids 6 to 12 are $5,
Yeah.
under 6 are free. We try and keep things as reasonable as possible. I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously we're renting 3 huge buildings and everything else involved, but we want people to come out and enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, Jeff, for coming on tonight. And, this is going to be an incredible event, I believe. And I can't wait to be there in person. Make sure you come out if you're able, if you're interested. And again, I will be at the Vermont Sci-Fi Fantasy and Horror Expo on April 25th and 26th at the Champlain Valley Expo in Essex Junction, Vermont. I'll be hosting the paranormal panel. Come find me, say hello, and let's talk history and supernatural face to face. Again, tickets are $20 for one day, and for the weekend, it's $30. Kids under 6 are free. And all links I'll put in the description below. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so that you never miss, one of my twice a week shows here at the Common Historian. Until next time, remember, history never truly dies. It just finds new ways to haunt us. I'll see you next time.